Hi everyone, it's Rabbi Lucas. I'm recording this in New York where I'm here for the bris of my nephew, and I'm very sad I can't be with you, but really excited to celebrate with my family and welcome a new baby into the covenant of the Jewish people. I look forward to sharing his name with you once it's public, and to sharing in the joy when I get back. I'm sorry that means I can't be there to teach you, but I hope that this video is helpful in continuing our study, and look forward to checking in about our progress next week when we meet back in person. Okay, let's pick up right where we left off. If you remember, we're in Genesis chapter 45, Parshat Vayigash, and if you remember, there was the big reveal last time. Joseph couldn't contain himself any longer, and so he tells his brothers that it's me, your brother Joseph, and the brothers are shocked. They're stunned. They can't respond. Joseph assures them that he means them no harm, and then they pick up in their conversation, and he tells them actually that he believes that this was part of God's plan all along, and that this was a way in which he could provide for the family during this time of famine. So I'm going to pick up just reading and asking a couple questions. If you want to discuss it with a chavruta, with a friend from the class, or just make a little progress so we can pick up next week with chapter 46, that'd be great. Remember, all the while as we're studying this parsha, I want you to be thinking about what strikes your interest. What do you want to investigate by yourself a little bit more deeply, so that you can write your Devar Torah, which will be 200 to 300 words, and printed in the program. Okay, I'm on page 277 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. I have my own here. Verse 9. Okay, so verse 9, it's the first full paragraph on page 277. So it's still Joseph speaking, and he says, Maharu va'alu el avi. He says, now hurry back to my father. I always find it interesting when there are words of urgency in the Torah text. And in this verse, there's actually two words of urgency. Maharu, hurry back to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all of Egypt. Come down to me without delay. Al ta'amo, don't stand there. I wonder why Joseph is in such a hurry. Is he concerned that there's limited time and we need to make sure that things happen in a certain order? Is he trying to shake his brothers out of their shock or their stun? I'm not really sure, but it struck me that it was there are these two urgent words, and I'm curious what you make of it when you study it together. Maybe hit pause now and discuss that with your partner. He says, remember, he says, I want you to go back and bring my father back to me. Right? I am in charge here, but I need you to come back down to me without delay. Verse 10, you will dwell in the region of Goshen. And if you remember the story from the Exodus of Egypt, this is the beginning. This is they're planting the seeds. This is the first Jewish neighborhood, the Pico Robertson of ancient Egypt. And Joseph is establishing it. He says there's good land where you can have and build a community there. And if you remember, that's where the Israelites lived at the beginning of the Exodus story. So you will dwell in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me, and you and your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all that is yours. So bring everything. This isn't a temporary transition. He says, I want you to come with everybody. It's not just send a couple representatives. I want you to stay for a little while. There I will provide for you. And it's interesting that the son and the younger brother is now providing for the rest of the family. Often there are transitions in a family where once a person who was cared for becomes the caregiver. I'd ask you to think about your own family relationships. What happens when roles change in a family? When somebody who used to be, the little brother, all of a sudden starts making more money than his siblings, or being in a position where he can help. Or think about caring for an elderly parent. There are all sorts of opportunities where those roles shift, and they're not easy. Any one of those transitions, because we often come to them with the expectations or the roles that I think I play in my family. I was always the baby, and I was always babied. I'm not speaking about me personally, just saying in general, somebody could think of themselves in that way. What happens when somebody says, I'm now going to care for the family? And how do those old dynamics that once were very, very strong, what does it take to make them change? Not an easy transition, to be sure. Maybe discuss with your partner right now, in what ways have your roles in your family changed, whether it's as a parent, as a sibling, as a child, as a friend. Think about the different ways in which you once played a certain role and now you play a different role. For there are yet 5 years of famine to come. Remember, Joseph had predicted that there were going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. It appears we're 2 years into the famine, and there's still 5 years left of famine, and it's not going to get any better. And so Joseph has prepared for this, and he's saying, come on down, I can help you weather the storm. You and your household and all that is yours may not suffer want. He's saying, I will make sure that you have plenty. Don't worry about that. You can see for yourselves, and my brother Benjamin for himself, that it is indeed I who am speaking to you. I wonder why he singles out Benjamin. Remember, Benjamin's his only full brother. Everyone else is a half brother. But I'm curious why he feels the need to single him out there. Is Benjamin maybe even more skeptical than the others? Maybe he was too young when Joseph left the family. I leave that as an open question. And you must tell my father everything about my high station in Egypt and all that you have seen, and bring my father here with all speed. Again, there's this is a text in a hurry. There's the urgency with all speed. Why do you think it's important for Joseph that his brothers report back his high station in Egypt? Is he bragging? Does he want his father to know that it's real? I'm not sure. Verse 14, we're towards the bottom of the page. Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv vayevk. I think this is a very touching moment. With that, he embraced his brother Benjamin around the neck and wept. There are several moments where brothers embrace and weep in the book of Genesis. I actually think Genesis is a really interesting book in terms of sibling relationships. If you think about Isaac and Ishmael, if you think about Jacob and Esau, if you think about Joseph and his brothers, really interesting sibling dynamics. Rachel and Leah, all sorts of very interesting, challenging, fraught family relationships. There's actually a wonderful book out by my former professor, Rabbi Dr. Amy Kalmanovsky. She calls it Dangerous Sisters, and she evaluates all of the sister relationships in the Bible. Here's a sweet, what I think is a sweet moment of reunification between two brothers who have been lost, and a moment of crying. What do you think, again, are in those tears, the emotions? Maybe pause here and think about what do you imagine they whisper into each other's ears after not having seen each other for so long? What do you imagine the emotions are that they're each feeling? And then he kissed all his brothers, verse 15. So it's not just Benjamin, but he wept upon them. Only then were his brothers able to talk to him. Do you remember all this time, the brothers have been silent. They've been shocked. What is it about Joseph hugging them and weeping that's different from the words he was saying to them that opened up the opportunity for his brothers to speak? And if we think about many relationships in which we're having difficulty in communicating, what is it that finally opens the channel to communication? Often I find that if I'm in a tough discussion or maybe an argument with somebody who I care about, it's only when I make myself vulnerable and I say, I'm scared, or you hurt me, or I feel hurt, or I feel sad. That's when actually the opportunity for reconciliation, the other person becomes vulnerable, softens as well, and there's an opportunity for reconnection. That seems to be what's happening here. Sometimes I wonder if when we're feeling distant from people who we care about and we love, rather than try and talk it through, shouldn't we just hug? Maybe if we allow ourselves to cry, maybe then there's the opportunity to reconnect. I'll keep going because I don't want to make this video too long. But again, you can take all the time you want, pause it, review it. I would be honored if you did, and discuss it with a friend. That's the most important thing. Maybe it's with somebody in your own home if you're watching this at home. Maybe it's with a fellow classmate. Take the time to discuss it and share your own thoughts on anything that you hear here. Verse 16, the news reached Pharaoh's palace. Remember, he banished everyone from the room, so now this is all being reported back to Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his courtiers were pleased. I'm not sure if there's actually anything in the commentary about that. I imagine this to be a genuine pleasure, that Pharaoh actually isn't always a bad meanie. But Pharaoh is happy to see his trusted advisor, to see, remember, this Pharaoh was good to Joseph. It's only a later Pharaoh who arose and didn't know Joseph, who begins the oppression and the slavery. There is a possibility for a benevolent leader to be generous and good to the Jews. I think often Jews have, in history, have treated political authorities with a certain, at least that is when Jews haven't been the political authorities themselves, have treated them with a little bit of cautious distance. I can't trust this leader, this president, this czar, or whoever, and often that was for good reason. The political authorities weren't always good to the Jews, but when they are, we should take delight in the fact that we have political authorities who are looking out for our best interests. I think that's what's happening here. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do as follows: load up your beasts and go at once to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall live off the fat of the land." Remember, this is all Pharaoh speaking to Joseph, telling him, assuring him that I'll take care of your family. Don't worry, make sure that they come here. And you are bidden to add, do as follows: take from the land of Egypt wagons for your children and your wives. Bring your father here, and never mind your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt shall be yours. Pharaoh's saying, don't worry about schlepping all your stuff down here. We'll provide for you here. This is going to be a good place for you to live. And he gives him wagons for the journey. He makes sure that he's settled. I want to keep moving because I want to get towards the end of this chapter, but there's more to be said about this generous gesture by Pharaoh, a name which we generally associate with wickedness. Here he's being very generous and very kind. Verse 21 on the bottom of 278. V'yasu chen b'nei Yisrael. The sons of Israel did so. B'nai Yisrael becomes the term for the Jewish people, for the Israelites. Here it's actually literal, and we become the 12 tribes of Israel, but I always like it when it's actually the sons of Israel. Remember, Israel is another name, is the changed name of Jacob. And so here it says that B'nai Yisrael, the sons of Israel, it actually means the sons of Israel, the 12 sons that Israel had. Joseph gave them wagons, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he supplied them with provisions for the journey. Verse 22, to each of them, moreover, he gave a change of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and several changes of clothing. He's, again, I think, pampering and babying his little brother, showing a little bit of extra love and care for him. I think that's part of what got Joseph in trouble. I'm not sure what to make of that. Maybe there just was extra love for his little brother, for his full brother. I'm not sure. It makes me wonder again how much, throughout the story, how much have people changed, how much have things stayed the same. Verse 23 on the top of page 279, and to his father he sent the following: 10 he-asses laden with the best things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with grain, bread, and provisions for his father for the journey. He's taking care, making sure that they get there on time with everything. As he sent his brothers off on their way, he said to them, do not be quarrelsome on the way. Do not fight with each other. Take a look in the commentary. The Hebrew stem reges means trembling and carries overtones of agitation, profound concern, or rage. The translation understands Joseph's words to mean do not engage in mutual recrimination. But the text can also be saying have no fear for your safety on the journey. It's unclear, are they going to quarrel or be afraid of an external threat, or is the quarreling internal? Remember, these are brothers who haven't had always the most peaceful journeys. And the question is, what is this journey going to require? And anytime you travel, you're vulnerable. They went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, and they told him, Joseph is still alive. Yes, he is ruler over the whole land of Egypt. His heart went numb, for he did not believe them. Remember, Jacob has thought that his son Joseph has been dead all this time. And it's always unclear to me how much he knew or how much he suspected or how much he would let himself know. But if you remember, he said, I am going to go down to my death a mourner. He sort of said, I will never be receive consolation for the death of my son. And here, to hear that news, what does it feel like to actually hear that so many years later your son is actually alive, and to have it confirmed? His heart went numb. He didn't believe them. But when they recounted all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And there, I think it's more than just snapping back to being able to. There was something transformative about remembering that about learning that his son was alive. It actually says Vatechi ruach Yaakov, his spirit, which in some way was dead, is now alive. It came to life. I'll leave that for your own consideration about what Jacob is going through and what his experience is. And Jacob says, "Enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go to see him before I die." And this begins what we'll pick up next time in chapter 46, the journey down to Egypt and the experience of the reunification of father and son. Thanks again for being flexible and allowing me to teach you via video. I look forward to seeing you back in person next week.